So level of detail is such an important concept that it's worth doing another example just to solidify the big ideas and then also to compare these level of detail calculations to some built-in calculations in Tableau, namely table calculations using across and down. So if that's not super familiar, that's okay. Let's go ahead and make an example and see how it goes. So let's split up sales by month and by genre, and so in a table. So I'm going to take genre out of the book data sheet and put it in my rows, and I'm going to take sales date out and put it in my columns, and that's from the sales data sheet. And I don't want to aggregate by year, I actually want to aggregate the sales date by month. So now I have one cell per genre month combination, and I'm going to put the count of the sales in as text. So notice what's happened so far. I have each one of these, for instance, I had 323 sales in children's books in January, and so on and so on. We don't really want to think about the count in this particular case. We want to think about the percentage of the total. So we go down to quick calculations, percentage of total, and voila, we have percentages. But the question then is of what total? What is the total of which we're taking the percentage? And in this case, the default is across. We look across the table, and if we added up all of these percentages, we would get 100%. If you can change the default behavior by, again, clicking the triangle and saying compute using table down. If we were to select this, suddenly all the percentages change, and now if we were to add the percentages in each column, we would get 100%. But if we added percentages in rows, we would no longer get 100%. So let's switch it back to table across, back to the default, and see how we can relate this table across versus table down to level of detail calculations. So let's make a new calculated field, and we're going to call it fixed because its role is going to be changing, and I want to recreate these numbers. Okay, so we're going to recreate the table across first, and then we're going to recreate the table down, and then see what the differences between those two things are. So what do I want to do? I want to have the percentage of sales, but percentage of what, like what total of the genre across all years. So what I want to do is the count of the sales, and that's lowercase, divided by, and now I need my level of detail expression because the denominator, the total here, needs to be fixed at the genre level. So we'll say fixed at the genre level of detail, count of sales. So let's remember what this is saying. It's saying that we need to, and I'll deal with the error in a moment, we need to go down to the genre level of detail. Regardless of what level of detail the view is occurring at, we need to go down to the genre level. At that level, we need to count the sales, and then we're taking that as the denominator for our fraction. This count of sales, notice, does not have a fix associated with it, so this count will be happening at whatever level of detail the view is occurring at. And the level of detail at the view is at these pairs. So it's going to count up the number of children's books we sold in January. That's this bit. That's counting the sales at the level of detail of the view. And then it's going to divide that by a different count of sales, which is fixed at the level of genre, which is going to be the sum across all of these, ignoring the level of detail of month in the view. Notice I have an error here. So remember, I can only have aggregate functions or non-aggregate functions, but I can't mix the two. So here I have an aggregate here, and this is a non-aggregate here. But notice that for each one of these things, we're only going to have one, I'm sorry, let me be more precise. We only have one value for this, this quantity, this count fixed at the genre. So whether we use sum or average or even attribute, adder, it doesn't matter. So this is just treat it as the first one, for instance. So let's sum this up and put this into our table. And it's going to look pretty bad for a second. And the reason for that is because it's currently in decimal format instead of percentage format. That's easily fixable. So we just click the triangle, we go to format, and we change the format from numbers to percentage. And notice now we get perfect agreement between our fixed calculation and the default table calculation in Tableau. So notice again, I mean, it's all about what you're fixing. So let's to see that really play out, let's change it to the across going down and see what happens. So obviously when we change to across going down, or table going down rather, we have completely different numbers. Our fixed calculation no longer matches, and that's because our fixed calculation no longer makes sense. Because we're no longer, if we're calculating the table average or the percentage of total going down the table, we're no longer fixing genre. That's our across. So what we actually need to fix here is the month of the sale date. Again, the numerator doesn't change because that's counting at whatever the level of detail is in the view, and the level of detail of the view has not changed. The view is the same, like the visualization is the same as it ever was. The only thing that's changed here is how we're thinking about the total, and that total now is by month rather than by genre, so we're fixing that month. When we hit OK, notice what happens. Everything is in perfect agreement again. No problems at all. So the point being that, like, even things that look normal, like table calculations by pane, table calculations by cell, table calculations by fields, these are really level of detail expressions in disguise. Tableau has, they know that level of detail expressions are a pain, that they're a pain point for users, and so to whatever extent possible, they've wrapped these things up. You shouldn't have any shame in like using those things. That being said, it's not always the case that they do everything you want to do. There are plenty of cases where you want a level of detail expression that is not provided by default in Tableau, and you still need to kind of know how to do your own. The point is to practice in cases where we can write an expression that we think is going to work and then compare it to some ground truth, namely, in this case, table calculations across and down.